Hello everyone, on this episode of the Vitality Secret podcast, I am here with fellow health and life coach, Laura Bolton, who is kind of like the female version of me. We met quite recently, although we've been connected online for quite some time. We met in London a couple of months ago, and it was quite amusing because we kept on finishing each other's sentences off and realizing we had the same kind of interest in every way, shape and form, even to the wine that we drank. And even we found out that we have the same phone number almost. But the point is, it's going to be an interesting interview because we're very like-minded. And she's going to be sharing with you how she reversed her fibromyalgia, and as well as other symptoms like IBS, and also how she's kind of healed her body from the likes of a stroke, a very minor stroke, and which is quite a big thing. So she's in the health and wellness space just like me, and she's been helping other people as I do, and I'm excited to have her on to share her wisdom with you. And really we're going to be talking about the mind-body connection here, and the role of stress, or the impact of stress on the body, and how you can get over this. So without further ado, thank you, Laura, for coming on the podcast. I'm delighted to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this is going to go. I think you're going to provide some really valuable information. And yeah. So could you give us a story, or not just a story, can you give us some background about how you got into this space? Like most people within the health and wellness space, there's always some kind of story that we have which triggers our interest. And I expect that's the same with you. Can you give us a background?
Yeah, of course. You're right. I don't know anybody, to be honest, that works in this space that hasn't got a story which kind of took them into doing that. A few years ago, I had just a multitude of symptoms. So I had IBS, eczema, really low mood. I was struggling with my energy. I was exhausted, like just so many different symptoms that were just progressively worsening. And I just felt really horrible. And I know that's quite common nowadays, but it's certainly not normal, right? There's a difference between common and normal. And I was also getting sick quite a lot. So I'd get, colds and throat infections and things quite regularly. And, I'd go to the doctor and I'd just get given antibiotics, and they would give me creams for my eczema, and they would tell me there was nothing I could do about my IBS, and I had to take antidepressants for my mood, which I didn't take. I was quite, nervous about medication. So it was around the time when it was getting quite bad that I discovered the field of functional medicine, which totally made sense to me, because it's all about getting to the root cause, and rather than treating symptoms, actually find out, why is this actually happening? What's really behind it? And I kind of couldn't believe that I hadn't known this before. To me now, it just seems so common sense, but I just hadn't really realized. So I discovered people like Mark Hyman and Chris Kresser, who are amazing guys in the functional medicine field. And I started to make changes to my lifestyle and my diet with a focus on my gut and healing my gut. And over the course of time, my symptoms all started to improve and then disappear.
Amazing.
And so I didn't take any medication. I didn't need anything. And it was just like, it was a revelation. It was just, but I hadn't known it before. And then it kind of simultaneously coincided with me being dissatisfied working in the corporate world. I was just really unhappy, and I knew I had this other calling. It's almost like it's always been within me, but I didn't know what it was. And then it just all kind of, there was a synchronicity of it all happening. And then I decided, actually, I'm so fascinated by this, and I'm seeing so many people struggling with so many issues, that I know I can use my experience and all of my learnings that I was starting to do to help other people. So then I kind of just went down a rabbit hole, and you know what it's like, you just become so into all this stuff and learning so much. And yeah, and then it turned into the work that I do now, and I absolutely love it, as I know you do.
Yeah, amazing. What a story. Can you just tell us quickly how you stumbled upon functional medicine? Because not many people discover it. And it's only those who really go searching, I find, that discover functional medicine. And as you say, it seems so obvious once you discover it, because like, of course you want to get to the root cause of your illness. Why would you want to just take drugs? But it's, in my view, it's a kind of a conditioning thing that's gone on for many, many years, for about 110 years almost, where we've kind of been conditioned to think that drugs are the answer. And we have this kind of ingrained expectation to be prescribed a drug when we go to a doctor's, and it's considered normal. Like you said earlier, you know, what's normal and what's not. How did you discover functional medicine?
Well, it wasn't one, I kind of like to say it was one moment of revelation. It was more over a sort of short period of time where I'd started actually reading about like just sort of things online and stuff about gut health, which I know is a lot talked about a lot more now, but a few years ago, it was kind of just becoming popular, I suppose, as a topic, and reading about, you know, how diet can affect certain things and diet can affect your gut. So there was already some kind of intrigue on my part, because I've always been incredibly curious. I'm very intellectually curious. So I always want to understand stuff. And I was thinking to myself, why is it that I feel so crap and I have all these things? And so there was a bit of exploration going on online and finding certain bits of information there. But then I actually coincided with me meeting my ex-partner, who was training in functional medicine. So then I started.
That helps.
Yeah, it does, right? So then I started.
Wasn't your ex-partner at the time?
No, now.
That'd be weird.
Oh,
anyway,
so many stories.
Yeah. So,
yeah, but that kind of sort of coincided, and then I started learning more, and I actually, you know, discovered, you know, the people like Chris Kresser and Mark Hyman, and just started delving deeper into it. And the thing is, you only need one insight. It is almost like Alice in Wonderland, you know, going down the rabbit hole. Like once you know, then you're kind of in, and then
you can't look back.
Yeah, you literally can't go back, because you've seen completely different way, and then it makes so much sense to you that why would you ever think anything different? It's amazing, isn't it?
So can you talk us through your symptoms of fibromyalgia?
Yes. So this actually happened. So all of the original issues that I had was a few years ago, and then the fibromyalgia issue, and then the minor stroke and things around that happened. It was around about a year ago, or just under a year. I think it was maybe 11 months ago that actually happened, and it was very kind of unexpected, and I was very surprised because I was so healthy.
Yeah, this is a really interesting point, because you were already in the health and wellness space. You had done all of these studies, you had healed yourself from all of these other symptoms. And then what do you know? You've got this new thing called fibromyalgia, and you're thinking, hang on, how does this happen? I thought I'd nailed this. So back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was like, God damn it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'm very conscious of changes that happen within my body and within my mind, and noticing things that are happening. And I noticed I started to get these, you know, all these symptoms. So one was tenderness all over my body. So even just trying to wash in the shower, and rub my skin hurt. It was like I was like my muscles, everything just felt really tender. And then another thing that I had was really bad pain in my jaw, and I think it's referred to as neuralgia, where it's like almost like a nerve pain. So it was up the right side of my neck and into my jaw, and it was there were moments where it was so painful it would just reduce me to tears, because you know, especially anyone who's had like really bad toothache or, you know, something like that, in that area, it's so sensitive, and I was in a lot of pain. And I think the third main symptom that I had was, it kind of felt like my brain wasn't working. Like it was I had brain fog. My sort of cognition and my processing power just wasn't where it normally was, and I just felt really foggy and heavy in the head, and that kind of knocks onto mood as well, because obviously when you've got brain fog and brain inflammation and stuff happening there, you know, it feels kind of crappy and you feel tired and everything. So I kind of had all that going on, and every so often I would also get really intense just pain, maybe in my, you know, like my sort of like in my arm, for example, or down my leg. And it felt almost like, you know, when you get sciatica and you have like, you know, pain in your, you know, sciatic nerve, and that kind of feeling. And it was like very much felt like my nerves.
Wow.
But in my muscles and stuff, it was super weird. And I didn't really go, oh, I've got fibromyalgia. Like
I was
it wasn't.
Yeah, I was about to ask, how did you find out that you had fibromyalgia? Were doctors able to diagnose it?
No.
Or was that a self-diagnosis?
Well, so the first thing the reason I realized it was fibromyalgia is thanks to Lady Gaga, the musician.
Obviously.
Of course.
Dr. Gaga.
Dr. Gaga. I was watching a documentary film, which is very, very good, by the way, on Netflix.
I've seen it.
About her. I think it's called 5'2", and it kind of just follows her. Like, it's great, and it really shows her and kind of her as a person, and her getting, you know, doing her tour and all of these different things. It's very well made, but she suffers with fibromyalgia.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so she was just
being in pain and having these symptoms in the documentary film, and they're trying to, you know, work on her muscles, and they're trying to help her, and she starts talking about the symptoms, and she starts talking about what's happening, and that it's fibromyalgia. And I was like, oh my God, that is exactly what's happening with me.
Wow,
and
amazing.
then from there, I then went online and started researching it. And whenever I was, you know, obviously you and I both know there's certain sources that are reputable sources and, you know, good places to kind of look. And the list of symptoms was in, you know, kind of very similar to what I had. So I thought, well, this must, you know, in terms of a label, I mean, you know, fibromyalgia is just a label for symptoms, just like depression is a label for symptoms of depression, right? But the symptoms, regardless of what they're called, those were the symptoms that I had, and clearly something was causing them.
Right. So your next mission was to find out what was causing these symptoms. And I just want to circle back to what you just said, because that's a really important thing you just said. Just how these labels are the labels to symptoms, because we often think of these things as illnesses or diseases. Like, I used to think eczema was my thing, like it was my illness that I just had because of my genes. Some people think, yeah, I've just got this illness or disease called IBS or type 2 diabetes, or, you know, any autoimmune disease. Fibromyalgia I think is classified as an autoimmune disease, or can I say this, as far as cancer, a symptom of something happening in the body. Like, so,
of course.
I don't want to go too much into that because it's not the topic for this discussion, but although I have done a huge amount of research into it. But what you said is super important, because as soon as we take away that label and don't think of things as an illness, we just think, okay, that's a symptom. That's like a messenger from the body indicating something needs our attention.
Yes.
It's like the warning light.
The body gives us signs.
It's just like a warning light in the car going, hey, go and check this out. There's something out of balance.
Yeah, so, it's our body's way of giving us messages. And in fact, I'm reading a book at the moment by Gabor Mate, which is called "When the Body Says No," and this is all about the body giving signs and what's kind of behind it. So yeah, that's all it is. Brilliant.
I just got goosebumps when you say Gabor Mate then, because it's huge. And when the body says no is such it's such an impactful title for a start, because it's your body screaming, going, come on, have a look at what's happening here. And we've been, I don't want to use this word, but in a way it is essentially this. We have been conditioned to not listen to our own bodies. You know, from the moment we're born, we're born, we go to the doctors if something goes wrong, or, you know, our body displays a symptom to us. We go to the doctors, we get a drug, hide the symptom, and just pretend nothing ever happened, just continue life. And then it's almost the norm that when we age, we're given these medications which mask symptoms. They create further symptoms, further harm. They mask the symptoms. They create further harm. They deteriorate the immune system, and often they create symptoms for which another drug is then prescribed, and then you end up being on this cocktail of medications and this pill for a pill society in which we live. And some people think that's normal. It's actually in our society, people think that's normal. So
when it's all you know, you're going to think it's normal, because as you said, from an early age, we're also taught very much not to feel.
Yes.
So it's a big part. Like, even when we're little, it's like, be quiet, don't make a fuss, like don't feel, shush. You know, it happens our whole life, and then we just get conditioned to just think that things are the way they are. And also, I think when we see so much illness around us, it normalizes it for us. So it is, right? So then we feel like, you know, it's like the whole aging thing. Well, you know, I used to think when you get older, you just get ill. Because that's what happens when you get old, right?
It's normal to lose your memory.
Mobility, and you ache, and your brain starts to go, and that's just the way it is. And why do we think that? Well, because there's partly some conditioning, but it's really what we see actually happening. And therefore, because it's so common, it feels more normal to us. So I think, you know, tapping into actually feeling what's going on in your body and being able to sense something's not right. I used to be really numb to it. I suffered for years with like IBS and all these things, and I just kind of thought it just was
genetic.
Yeah, like either genetic. Or just, well, you know, these. I mean, I remember even when I had IBS, people saying to me, "Oh yeah, I've got that." Well, you know, it's just so common, isn't it? And I didn't even really question it. I was just like, "Oh, it's just one of those things that people just get, and there's nothing you can really do about it."
Yeah,
I was part of that, you know, that kind of problem.
Yeah, and that is so common, you know, to have people say that's normal. And I like the way you just kind of differentiated between conditioning and just kind of an accepted kind of social norm, social behavior. Maybe that's an easier way of hearing it. When everyone is talking the same language and everyone's saying, oh, it's normal to get ill. It's normal to get all these bugs when there's a bug going around.
You know, to feel tired, to have no energy, to feel depressed. Oh, that's just modern life. It's just the way it is.
Just accept it. That's totally normal. It's one thing that gets me every year is how everyone falls ill around Christmas time or in January. And there's a bug going around. There's a bug going around, people. Everyone's got this bug. And I'm like, okay, let's just reverse engineer this. What have you done for the last month? Let's just see what you've done to your body. Have you been feeding your body with fuel and cell nourishing food, and moved and drunk loads of, you know, hydrated, really looking after your immune system? Or have you been drinking loads of alcohol? Have you been eating loads of stuff which is just completely loaded up your body with toxins? And what do you think is more likely? I mean, there's bugs always going around. It's whether our immune system is strong enough to actually deal with them.
Of course, totally. And I used to get sick all the time. Like, I mean, there was one point at its worst where I was getting a ear, nose and throat infection or a chest infection or something of that nature. I would have something like that for about a week. I'd be well for about a month, and then I'd get it again. I was constantly getting sick. And if there was a bug going around, I got it. And I used to sit there and think, why is it some people seem to just not catch this stuff? And now, obviously, I realize it's because they have a strong immune system, because there's bugs going around everywhere. I mean, everyone told me when I came to Bali, because this is where I'm now living, everyone told me when I came to Bali, oh, you'll get really sick, you'll get Bali belly, you'll have all these issues. Touch wood, I've been here 6 weeks and I've not had anything.
Amazing. That really goes to show as well. I've got a similar story. I went to this Tony Robbins event at the end of 2015. I was told everyone gets ill. 3,000 people, you know, in a room for 6 days. You're high in a really intense environment. I was told everyone gets ill. So I paid a bit more attention to even then, even though I was in health and fitness, but I was loading up on micronutrients, vegetable juicing every day, salads, completely avoiding all the took in my own nutrient bars, hydrating. I didn't get ill. I was totally fine. I'd say like 99% of, obviously quoting that figure out of thin air, but the majority of people got ill. Like everyone in this Facebook group was complaining of being ill. Do you know 99% of statistics are made up on the spot? But yeah, I didn't get ill. And it's just, that's an indication, just like you've demonstrated, how it's the immune system's susceptibility to these bugs going around, which will determine whether we suffer or not.
Yeah, totally. So, and this is why I always say, like I say to people, if you want to avoid all of the colds and the flus and all the bugs in the winter, start preparing now. Start strengthening your immune system in the summer, because by the time you get to winter, you'll have a strong immune system and you're not going to get these bugs.
Brilliant advice. Brilliant. Love it. Love it. So how let's go back to your fibro. How did you get rid and how did you address the symptom called fibromyalgia?
Wow. So, I mean, I think knew it had to be something to do with the immune system and, you know, of course, and the gut is a massive part of that. It's probably the biggest part of it, right? So, and of course I did research. So I found research that showed there's a really big correlation between gut issues and fibromyalgia symptoms. And also that trauma and stress can be a trigger for it. And of course, as you know, trauma and stress also affects the gut. So our gut and our immune system is not just affected by food, which is a big one, but it is also stress and trauma, like the what I call the emotional stuff. And it can also be physical, environmental kind of stuff. So, but ultimately it is really about the gut. And I, you know, I'd been living in London for just a few months at that point, and I'd gone from a different environment because I was living in Brighton by the sea, and it was a very different lifestyle. I was getting a lot of nature, I was getting a lot of fresh air, and when I moved to London, like energetically, it's very different. It's quite stressful. And it's polluted, and I would say, you know, my diet was still good, but probably not as great as it was before, just because of the lifestyle of London, right? And then I'd been through like quite a long period of like a sustained period of stress, so kind of like chronic stress, and due to something that had happened like just over a year previously. And I believe that it was the triggering of that past trauma and the accumulated effects of stress and all of the effect of that on the gut, because it's all interconnected, right? You can't just pinpoint one specific thing. It's all connected together, but ultimately affects the gut, it affects the nervous system, and that's what then affects, you know, and creates these sorts of symptoms. Like my body was clearly reacting to something. And that's what I believe it was. You know, from all the research that I was doing, all the things I was reading, plus my own intuition and knowing of my body and what was happening in my life, that was the conclusion that I came to.
I think that's a really important thing to talk about there, because, you know, you've mentioned how the gut it's a result of, gut health is a combination of lots of different things. So at that time, you're already eating really healthily. You're eating really good food. You're, well, in Brighton, by the way, I love Brighton. That's where I went to university. You know, you're getting nature. There's lots of different things that contribute to gut health. Light as well. Sunlight is a major contributor for gut health. Our emotions, what we're consuming, what we're exposed to, all the environmental toxins, all that kind of stuff. But there's a big one here, which is the emotional impact or rather our impact of emotions onto our gut health. So
Yes.
you were able to decipher, and your intuition said, okay, there's something deeper going on here. I'm already doing so many different things right. What am I missing? And that enabled you to figure out that there's something going on with a mind-body connection here. So
Totally. Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah. So how did you go about releasing? I guess, is it fair to say that you would release the trauma, release the trapped emotions from your body in some way?
Yes. So I really identified that this was the factor, right? Because as you said, like my diet wasn't like as perfect as it was in Brighton, but it was still pretty good, right? And I'm doing all the things. I'm doing all the physical things. And when I was ill previously, like a few years ago, it was predominantly sort of more physical stuff that I'd used to heal. So it was very much about diet and just dialing in my sleep and all that kind of physical stuff. So this really was something different, and I knew that it was about stress and trauma. So one thing I did, I did lots of things. One thing I did was rested as much as I could, because I was just I was really tired. It just wiped me out. So I rested as much as I could. So rather than forcing myself to be awake all day, I just had to listen and say, look, I can't, I was only working like a few hours a day because I couldn't do anything more than that. So lots and lots of rest. I also started doing something called TRE, which is the trauma release exercise, which I believe had an impact. Again, it's difficult to attribute specifically what helps because I did a combination of things, but I'm sure it all helped. So I was doing weekly TRE sessions to kind of, where you know what it is, right? Basically where you shake.
Yeah. I'll just speak to that very quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go.
I came across this a few years ago when a friend of mine reversed her chronic pain. She's actually on my podcast as well, but she was suffering from really bad chronic pain for 3 years, very, very debilitating and almost disabling. And she discovered the mind-body connection. And there was a book called Healing Back Pain, the mind-body connection, that she went with actually. And she actually retrained in trauma release exercises. So that's actually when I first came across this idea of releasing trauma from the body, because I discovered that we store it all over us, all in our muscle fascia, and particularly in our psoas muscles here. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but the top of our legs and kind of hip area is our psoas muscle, where we store a lot of trauma, isn't it? Is this what you discovered?
Yeah, totally. And also in the solar plexus, so under our ribs, that's where I had a lot of, because another thing I did was fascia release.
Oh, nice. Yes.
So which was incredibly painful. But yeah, we store, as you said, we literally store trauma in our muscles and fascia, but also we store stresses at a cellular level. And it's the stuff we don't even think about. Like it can be a major trauma. It can often be trauma from the childhood that we don't even remember. So this is one of the things that Gabor Mate is a specialist in. And it can also be an accumulation of stresses. So just all those little things that happen each day, like you miss your bus, or you nearly, you nearly get run over, or you forget your wallet. Like all these little things, they actually create just tiny amounts of stress in our system. And if we're not regularly releasing them, then they store. And an example that I like to use is of animals in
I was literally about to say this.
I love a good nature documentary. Attenborough is like literally one of my people. And animals in the wild, when they've been, like a zebra or whatever has been chased by a lion and they've managed to escape, they do this like mad shaking thing, right? Which is like a very quick but intense shake. And that's something they do naturally to shake out the trauma. What happens with humans is from an early age, we're told, don't feel, don't shh, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
Yeah, don't cry, boys. Yeah,
I love a good cry.
me too.
You know why I love a good cry?
In front of a chick flick.
Yeah.
But I watch them every day.
Awesome, love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so true that we don't allow ourselves to just express emotion, and this is why so much stuff gets just stored, and why we end up getting depressed, and we end up with physical symptoms and all of this stuff. So I really became fascinated with this whole area of the mind, you know, the mind-body connection and stress and trauma. And I actually realized, and it's my belief now, that you can do all the amazing physical stuff. You can have the most perfect diet. You can have an amazing environment. You can do all the biohacks that are out there. But if you have not dealt with your trauma and with stress, and you're not regularly releasing stress, you are going to start to get some physical symptoms at some point.
There's a sound bite right there, what you just said. I'm in full agreement with what you just said, and I just got goosebumps all over me. I second that, and I couldn't say it any better. You could do everything right, but if you've not dealt with the emotional side of things, you know, that's what's going to create the symptoms. And something I just want to draw on is the idea of trauma, because trauma can sometimes sound like a big word. It can be, you know, people often associate things like, you know, rape and, you know, really, really severe events that happen to us. But what you also said is there can be lots of smaller things. So there's like this huge trauma, which obviously impacts the body, and that gets stored. And then there's small trauma, which are all these smaller things. It could be an argument with a sibling or a parent when you're 5 years old. That gets stored in the body because you've not shaken it off like the animals do. And over time, it's that cumulative effect. And that can be the trigger for almost every illness known to man. And
yes,
from what I've understood is fibromyalgia and chronic pain and cancer, but fibromyalgia and chronic pain are more linked directly to the mind-body connection than most other things that I've come across in the last 4 years. And those who have reversed it holistically have all gone down the emotional trauma release way of doing it, because it's almost like the only way of doing it.
You have to get that trauma out. It's got to go.
Yeah. And like you, I've become fascinated in this area as well. And I realized that the trauma is actually stored as electromagnetic fields of energy, like balls of energy in our muscle fascia. Like, we are all energy anyway, but these are like balls of electricity, of energy. I discovered this from Dr. Bradley Nelson, who wrote the Emotion Code. And he says, you know, we can release this very, very easily, almost through intention sometimes as well. There's lots of different ways of releasing it. But when we understand this as energy that gets trapped in the body, so trauma is also called the trapped emotion, it can block these different pathways in the body. So we've got all these different electrical systems in the body, which all go through our teeth, by the way. You probably know about that. But all of these different systems. So if the trauma is blocking, as a form of electricity, is blocking the electricity flowing around the body, it can shut down that circuit or compromise that circuit. So it can suppress the immune system, or it can suppress, I don't know, your adrenal gland function, or your stomach, or your gut. Or organs, just like lighting circuits, or, you know, power socket circuits. There's different circuits in the body, and trauma can literally shut down or compromise, probably not shut down, but compromise that circuit. And it means the voltage drops, the electricity drops, and then that circuit is compromised. So I just wanted to interject with that, because I think it's really fascinating.
It's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. And also, you know, stress, we know that stress affects the microbiome. So when we feel emotional stress, our microbiome gets distressed.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's like if we, for example, are nervous about something, let's say we're doing an exam or we're really nervous about something, that the nervousness can create issues with our gut. So we've all had that feeling where we're like, oh God, I've got butterflies, or we then kind of get like problems with, you know, like our bowels or something like that. That's a classic, you know, example of how just the power of thinking. So it's the stored trauma.
Yes.
It's the stored trauma and the stress, but it's also actually our mindset and our way of thinking and the lens we see things through and all of that stuff. So I think it's a combination, and that's why I addressed some physical stuff with like the TRE and the fascia release, but then I also did a lot of the I guess I would say more of the sort of present mental emotional stuff. Like I really got into JoeDispenza.
Love that man. I've got a man crush on him.
Yeah. He's just amazing. And, you know, as you know, he does a lot of work with, and Bruce Lipton as well. Yeah. They do a lot of work with the power of the mind to both create disease and to heal. Because Joe says, we know that the mind and trauma and stress and our mindset and all of those things can create disease. So therefore, why on earth would the opposite not apply? So we can use our mind. So yes, we can release the traumas, but also we can use our minds to actively heal. So I started doing JoeDispenza guided meditations. I was spending quite a long time doing them, but you know what it's like when you get sick, everything else goes out the window. You know, people say, oh, I don't have time to be healthy, I don't have time for this. When you get sick, you have time. Like you suddenly make time because it becomes your number one priority. And there is nothing worse than feeling really sick and feeling like the worry actually of, could this be something really serious, or could this turn into something really serious? It's a worry. So it just became my total priority at that time. And I started doing, I was doing probably a couple of hours of Dr. Joe meditations a day, his healing meditations. Amazing. And also lots of journaling, gratitude, because you know, gratitude is an amazing emotion I know lots of people are talking about gratitude at the moment, but I don't necessarily know if people really understand how it works. Because when we feel gratitude, like when we genuinely feel it, not we write a list of things we're grateful for, when we actually really think about it and we have genuine gratitude, that's an emotion, that's a feeling. So when it comes to gratitude, I think there's a lot of people that don't necessarily fully understand the effect that can really have and how powerful it can be and how it works. So sometimes we think of gratitude as just, we'll just list a few things that we're grateful for, or we'll just write them down. And actually what's super important with gratitude is to feel it, like really feel it. So really thinking about the stuff that you're genuinely grateful for and really experiencing it and kind of getting yourself into that zone. Because when we do that, what happens is we start to emit feelings, and emotions emit energy frequencies. This is why affirmations alone don't work. Because you know, we go, I'm confident. And you say it over and over again, and it can be helpful, but you have to, you know, Dr. Joe talks about how you have to pair a clear intention mentally, which is the thought, with a positive emotion.
With an elevated emotion, Yes,
an elevated emotion, that's right.
Yeah.
So a clear intention with an elevated emotion is what helps to create the healing, and it's also what helps to attract positive energy towards us, because when we are in certain energy vibration, like attracts like. So if we're always negative and we're thinking negative things, we will attract negativity towards us, and we'll create negative energy in our body, which goes to your point that you were talking about earlier with the energy and the electrical stuff. So it's you know, it's important to really, you know, feel the gratitude and do that regularly. And I guess the ultimate is to get to a point where we are just living in a state of gratitude. I mean, that's the like holy grail, right? That's the ultimate, is you know, just feeling grateful, and just that being your default
emotion.
setting. So Yeah, exactly.
think,
So I find that very, very powerful. But yeah, any emotion like gratitude, love, compassion, all of those emotions,
care,
they are, yeah, they are all the high,
vibration.
positive frequency, and vibration. Yes, absolutely. So that's a key part of JoeDispenza's work and Bruce Lipton's work. And that's kind of the basis of a lot of the meditations. And so I did a lot of that. And then I also did things like, I was just trying out there's so many different modalities out there that can help with this stuff. So sound healing, started doing different sound healing classes, Kundalini yoga. That's very powerful. In fact, Kundalini yoga is being used a lot now to treat severe depression.
Good. Good.
Yes,
it's like magic. Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if you know of Kelly Brogan.
I've heard that. Yes.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's a holistic psychiatrist who started off in the traditional route, and she saw the light, and she wrote an amazing book called A Mind of Your Own, which is all about healing. It's mainly aimed at women, but men could read it too. It's all about healing depression through natural means. So she's functional medicine practitioner, but she's also a psychiatrist. And yeah, it's all the classic stuff. Heal the gut, look at the diet and the physical stuff, heal the trauma. And her latest book, I think, has literally just come out, which is very much more around the emotional stuff. So she's almost been through that similar evolution that I've been through, where she's really realized how powerful our emotions actually are. And she has amazing results with people, just going from literally being suicidal to feeling great. And she uses a combination of natural things, but Kundalini yoga is one of the things that she uses. So I thought I'll give that a go.
Definitely.
Because when you're sick, you'll try the things, and different things can work for different people. And that's why I think it's very important that people are aware of what's available, and that they do things that kind of resonate with them and feel good to them. But yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes everything that I did. So I did quite a few things, but it worked.
Amazing. Congratulations. Everything you've just said is just so awesome. Love it. Thank you. I just want to circle back to the JoeDispenza thing, because I'm a massive fan of his, and Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden. That trio, they're just phenomenal.
The Three Musketeers.
Yeah. By the way, listeners, if this is new to you, start looking into these guys, because they're just amazing.
They're amazing.
They will transform your life in every way, shape, and form. And I'm really glad Laura brought them up. Something I want to talk about, the meditation quickly, because you touched on those 4 emotions. You touched on appreciation, gratitude, love, and care. Care and compassion. Love, care, appreciation, gratitude. They have been proven at the Institute of Heart Math to be the most effective emotions when it comes to stimulating the immune system and triggering all these healing chemicals and hormones and compounds. Excuse me. And yes, a simple 3 or 4 minute meditation with heart-brain harmony, which is what you're doing with these JoeDispenza meditations, can actually create so much healing in the body and anti-aging hormones. It's phenomenal. This is all scientifically proven. This isn't wishy-washy woo-woo bullshit. This is real, solid science. And that's also why I love JoeDispenza as well, because it's not just, let's just try this and let's just see what happens. He's got solid studies with massive data and how this happens. And
he does. And his rates of, he does, as you know, he does events all over the world. I think he does a 1-week intensive event once a month somewhere in the world. And the examples that he gives of people that have healed, people that have gone, that have been suffering with blindness, people that have stage 4 cancer, people that have Parkinson's, people that have had chronic pain and so many issues for years and years, literally recovered.
Yeah.
And he has the data, and it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah,
Powerful.
I just got goosebumps as you're listing all those conditions. It's what we would classify today as a miracle or spontaneous remission. We probably can't go too much into detail about how this all works, but all I'd like to emphasize is the fact that we have so much power to heal ourselves. It's unbelievable. Like, one of my favorite quotes is, your body's ability to heal without drugs is greater than Western medicine has ever allowed you to believe. It's one of my
Absolutely.
It's one of my favorites because it's mine. It's I actually altered or changed another quote slightly just to make it more specific around Western medicine, and it was never claimed, so I've claimed it as mine. But the point I want to make is we have all these modalities. You mentioned just a minute ago that there's lots of different options, and everyone can pick what works for them. Every option works some of the time. It's just finding which one works for you. And there are so many methods of healing. I don't even want to use the word alternative, because even that word alternative health has negative connotations. It's like, oh, don't try that wishy-washy stuff. Yeah, it's like, no, that's the real way of doing it. Drugs.
It's been done for thousands of years, like since humans were humans, right?
Since the beginning of time, that's actually what's been medicine.
And yet we call it alternative.
I know, it's fucking. Oh, I just swore my own. I swore my own podcast. We talked about swearing earlier. This is how passionate I am about getting this word across, because I'm a huge believer that the body's ability to heal is huge, and when we come across these modalities and we experience them, we can see. That is true medicine. True medicine helps the body to heal. Medication just masks symptoms and puts you into this low vibration state. You're just victim to your illness, victim to your genes, victim to the Western medication system. And what you're talking about is
a business model.
It's genius. It's absolutely genius. A recurring revenue business model. Put everyone on drugs until the day they die. Marvelous. So yeah, so I'm a bit passionate about this. You might be able to see, but thank you so much for bringing.
I understand. I understand. I feel passionate about it as well. And I think, to your point about once you've experienced stuff, you can't go back. When you've really, a lot of people. Look, a few years ago, I thought all this meditation and all the sound healing and all that stuff, I thought it was weird. I thought it was a load of rubbish. I didn't believe in anything. I didn't believe in being spiritual or higher powers or anything. And I've experienced so much, and I've learned so much, and I've been part of, communities of people that are all doing this stuff. And it's so powerful. You can't see the world in the old way once you've experienced it. And it's powerful and it's natural. We are naturally designed to be well.
Yes.
We just have to give our bodies the internal and external environment to thrive. When we give them the right environment, we naturally thrive.
And that's epigenetics right there, isn't it? Epigenetics says it's the environment that signals the genes. It's not the genes that determine your outcome or whether you develop an illness. It's the environment in the body that signals the genes. So everything we've talked about is the environment, what we're consuming, how much we're moving at the very basic level, emotions, trapped emotions, environmental.
Whether we're watching the news, who we're hanging around with, like.
Yeah, the news is a big one. Don't get me started.
Oh my goodness. When I stopped watching the news a few years ago, it was one of the best things I've ever done.
You healed. Oh my God, all my symptoms have gone. Yeah.
But it was honestly, that was one of the best things I've ever done for my mental health. And people say to me, you're crazy. You have to watch the news. You need to know what's going on. That's rubbish. The news is not what's going on. The news is a few sensationalized stories that are designed to put fear and terror into people's hearts. And we see the consequences of that. So anything that's negative, any negative influence you have, sort it out, because the stuff that we see and do and hear affects our biology. It really does. Yeah,
I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm just stuttering then, so I'm not even going to try. So true, so true. It's about cleansing our emotions, isn't it? It's removing ourselves from toxicity in every way, shape, and form.
Yes.
And what you just said, the body's always wanting to heal. You said something to that effect. The body
Yes.
is constantly striving to be in a state of balance. It's constantly striving. It's constantly healing. In fact, we were
Yes.
born healing.
We do stuff to prevent it. That's the
Yes.
thing. It's trying to be healthy. It's trying to heal. And if we give it the right environment, it will be able to do so.
Yes. And that's it. We end up stepping in our own way. We're standing in our own way. We're stopping the body doing what it wants to do because there's all this toxicity in some form, whether it's toxic food. Some of this stuff in supermarkets should not be called food, but that's the first place to look. Whether it's that stuff people are eating, or whether they're sedentary, or environmental toxins, or emotional, or trauma. All of this is forms of toxicity which can actually compromise the various systems, and they don't allow for the body to heal itself. So
Yes. Totally.
Everything you've just talked about is creating that environment to signal the genes. I love it. Dr. JoeDispenza talks about how when we create a new environment, we signal new genes. And he also talks about how our thoughts and beliefs are the language of the brain, and how our feelings and our emotions are the language of the body.
Yes.
And how they work together with one another.
Yeah, of course.
But it's huge. And when we understand the impact of our emotions over our health, I think that is one of the biggest, revelations that I've discovered in the last few years, which brings me on to, I wanted to ask you, I mean, is there anything else you'd like to share right now as to how you kind of reversed your fibro and your other symptoms?
I think in terms of the tactics I use or the things I use, that was pretty much it. I mean, it's all based around, releasing past trauma, but also proactively creating an environment within the body that heals. So those two things simultaneously, is what really worked. And so yet again, through natural means, I've healed. And I think that, actually I see it as a blessing, as I always do with anything, because I do have an attitude of gratitude. That's what I kind of try and have, that even the bad stuff, even the stuff that was really hard, I'm very grateful for, because it taught me so much more about things that have helped me in my work, helping others, but also, really learning about the mind-body connection and deepening into that. I would never have got that deep into it if it hadn't been for me getting poorly again. So I just, but again, this is an attitude thing. It's like, what's the lens through which you see the world? Do you see, a lot of people dwell on past things. I mean, I used to, I dwell on something that happened a year ago. Somebody said, oh, I didn't like that text message they sent me. I hear it all. I'm very susceptible to that now. I hear it all the time. And people dwell and they give so much negative energy to so many things. And that's all creating damage. It's just slowly, gradually creating damage. So I think just, as you said, removing toxicity, whatever we're doing, whether it's food or whether it's the people we're hanging around with or the things we're listening to, is it pro-health? Is it helping me to have a great energy vibration, or is it dragging me down, and is it toxic?
Love that. That's really awesome. Thank you. And can I ask you for your number one vitality secret?
Well, this is tricky because there's so many things, right? But I think, just building on what we were saying, it's really around the emotions. I think if everybody could just become aware of this and really tap into what's going on for me emotionally, and thinking about the past traumas and past stresses, and just becoming mindful of it and becoming tuned into it. Because I think most people, and I think you said this earlier, most people are walking around not even thinking about it. It's like we're on autopilot, and there's so much negativity presently, but also in the past in our lives, and we're not conscious of it, and therefore we're not doing anything to resolve it. So I think if everybody watching could literally just be aware of it and then take steps to start addressing the emotional element, because it does not matter how much other physical stuff and hacks and things that you do, whilst they're important, if you have not sorted out your emotions, you will have problems. And I think there's another part to that, which is not only does that help you to heal and help you to thrive and be really healthy, but when you have positive emotions and you've sorted out all your past emotional crap, it makes it so much easier to actually have healthy habits. You know, a lot of people who are trying to make positive changes, let's say with their diet, the reason people eat crap food and they overeat and they binge and they do all these things is not really, there's an element of biological addiction, but it's emotionally driven stuff. So I think sorting out your emotions also helps you to actually, it gives you more self-respect, it gives you more, you know, more confidence, it makes you feel better. So then you don't turn to these things, and you find it easier to actually maintain healthy habits because you don't have all of that emotional stuff going on. So that would be it's quite a big thing, but I think it's incredibly important.
Yes, I think that's brilliant advice, what you just said. Really, really powerful stuff. Something I wanted to quickly draw in on was habits. You were talking about habits and how it's the emotions that drive our habits ultimately. And just one thing I thought of, so I want to talk about it, is really emotional trauma can be the impact of any kind of addiction, whether it's drugs or smoking or drinking or, you know, excessive drinking or excessive anything, sex or anything, really can be reverse engineered to find that, you know, this emotional trauma is the result of, is the root cause of that.
Yes.
And when we do the work, as it were, to get the emotions and release them from the body, we can release these addictive and behaviors, these habits that don't serve us. So I think
absolutely.
I was just going to say, I think it's a really incredible journey that you have been on, and, you know, people I've interviewed who have gone on this healing journey, and you touched on it earlier. You're grateful for having had the experience because you've learned all this awesome stuff, which you can then apply into your life, and you just start creating magic and you start manifesting awesome stuff. And because your
you would believe the stuff that I manifest.
I know, and that's a whole other conversation. And I'd love to do another. It's phenomenal, and I've got goosebumps again, because when you get to root cause, you heal. You raise your vibration, and then this might start losing people. But that is, you know, we talked about the law of attraction. We all know negative people attract negative stuff. We all know positive people attract positive stuff. We can all relate to that to a degree, I believe. Massive hands. And yeah, I think it's such powerful work. And a lot of people say, I'm grateful for the pain that I went through, or I'm grateful for this, this, I'm going to quote it, dis-ease that I had, because it enabled me to look at what's going on in my life, heal it, and now I'm better from it. So thank you for sharing that awesome nugget of your vitality secret to really address the emotional impact the impact of emotions on our health. I think that's brilliant. Laura, thank you so much. How can people find you? Do you offer, how do you offer support to people?
Well, if somebody really wanted to find me, they'd have to fly to Bali, because that's where I'm living. But online, probably my website is probably the easiest place, to be honest. I am on Instagram, but there's links to all the other channels and things on the website, which is laurajanebolton.com. And I have a podcast as well, Be More Human. But again, all the links to everything is through the website. So that's probably the easiest way.
Excellent. That's I'll put a link to that below this video. And congratulations on your podcast, by the way. That's amazing. And I love that title.
Thank you.
So thank you, Laura. Thank you for so much value that you've contributed today. I think that's really brilliant. If people go through this and they listen and they take notes, you've given so many gems of awesomeness. So thank you. And
thank you.
Until next time. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And check out the other episodes on the Vitality Secret podcast. Thank you for listening to the Vitality Secret podcast. If you like this, please leave a 5-star rating. And if you loved it, please take a few minutes to leave a review. The more ratings and reviews that are left, the easier it is for this life-changing information to get into the hands of people who need it. Don't forget to join my free 7-day program and ignite your inner healer at vitalitysecret.com.